All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcasts out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here, alongside Sam, CFC Central, and we're going to be getting into our match preview for what could be the defining fixture of the Premier League season: Chelsea versus Arsenal, good guys versus bad, the Rebel Alliance versus the Evil Empire, and an opportunity for Chelsea to once again save the entire galaxy from an idea of Arsenal fans getting a chance to celebrate winning a league title in late November, December. Sam, how critical is the matchup in your mind? This, to me, feels, I don't know, I want to say more important than the Barcelona match that we previewed. And obviously, we're kind of coming off the high of Chelsea having beaten Barcelona in such a wonderful fashion, but it feels pretty damn important.
I think this is the match of the season, definitely. If we have to make a statement, and we know the numbers against Arsenal, they've always been disgraceful in the past decade. So, if I remember correctly, no wins in 7 games against them, no wins at Stamford Bridge in 7 years. That's abysmal, Dan. Especially the kind of folklore that's attached to Arsenal games with Didier Drogba and the legends there. So I think that has to change. And if you have to really announce yourself as title contenders, then you have the perfect opportunity to do so. The issue being, I think, that Barcelona had some very well defined weaknesses. In my opinion, we're facing arguably the best team in Europe since the start of the new season. And that hurts for me to say as a Chelsea fan, but as a scout, as anybody who's analyzing the game, a very neutral opinion, they have been the best team in Europe by far. So it will be testing your mettle against the best, and all you can hope for is that you come out with flying colors and you give it your best shot. Last time like Chidge mentioned on the podcast, we waved the white flag too early, and this time it cannot be like that. You cannot afford to do it. Go out there, show what you're capable of, and even if it doesn't work your way, at least you made a point.
Yeah, you have to go down swinging if the result is still not in your favor. And I mean, just to recap, I don't think it's anyone's surprise that the last time we won against Arsenal was the 2-0 win, August 22nd of 2021. It has been far, far too long since we have won. I mean, again, that was a Thomas Tuchel side with goals from Lukaku and Reece James. Like, that's like how long ago we're talking about in terms of Lukaku was scoring goals for Chelsea at that time before he
Was
decided
his
to
first.
yeah,
That was his.
first
That
and
was his
one of his
first
few.
back, actually. Yeah, the first
Uh,
first of his, before his glorious interview. I think that was the first that he announced in his second homecoming, and what a match that was, to be honest. We absolutely boasted there, but like you mentioned, just few and far between after that, Dan.
Yeah, and even before that, I mean, you had to go back to 2019 for Chelsea's win. Prior to that, December 29th for that result. And that was a Frank Lampard victory with Jorginho and Tammy Abraham as the victors, with future Chelsea player Aubameyang as the individual who scored for Arsenal on that day. But look, if we're having to go back multiple years and pinpoint wins, it's not been good recent history for Chelsea against Arsenal. And so again, in this match preview, we're going to take a look at just how are things going for Arsenal currently. We'll take a look at what some of the strengths are, what the weaknesses are. And I think to Sam's point, going to be a lot of strengths to talk about in this one. We'll take a little bit of a conversation too, is around how Enzo Maresca is going to approaching this, some key questions and decisions he's going to have to make, particularly with the news dropping in the pre-match press conference that Cole Palmer is fit to start the match if required. And we'll then get into some on the ledge predictions as well as our final predictions about this episode as well. But Sam, if we just want to kind of go into it again, Arsenal currently on top of the Premier League table. Every team has played 12 matches, 9 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss in total, a plus 18 goal difference, 29 points. So we are 6 points behind them right now. And just in some of their recent fixtures, obviously they beat Bayern Munich 3-1 in the midweek in the Champions League. They beat Tottenham 4-1. Tottenham were good for nothing, completely spursed it. You had the 2-2 draw between Sunderland and Arsenal, which makes us feel a little bit better about our Sunderland result. And then you have to, again, go back much further into their past so far this season to go and actually find the loss. It was that 1-0 loss to Liverpool on August 31st. But since then, they have just been a side flying high in terms of their performances. Any thoughts just maybe on the Mikel Arteta version 7.2 progress that they've been making?
Fair enough, to be honest. But at this point, you expect them to be as good as they are. To be honest, you've tried assembling, at least getting players that fit into the philosophy. I really don't know about certain picks like Noni Madueke, but they've tried to assemble a side that speaks to the ethos of Arteta. And what they've done is, I think, speaks for itself. Top of the Champions League, top of the Premier League, and the displays that they've put out, the magnitude of it has obviously shaken a lot of people around. The Spurs dismantling I watched for this one was quite epic. Eze obviously turned up with a hat trick, and even the Bayern Munich game, which I felt like was one of the most high quality games that I've seen in terms of just how both sides were forcing the other to. It was like a rapid chess match, like a blitzkrieg chess match going, one move to the other having to respond. All these rotations in the middle of the park, and you try to look at this and say, okay, how are we going to cope with it? But I think the overriding feeling is that this is exactly how I felt when I watched PSG before the final. And, I was intimidated by the rotations and how well coached they look. And in one offs, which you can consider, in my opinion, another Club World Cup final, you can go in as the underdog and hope to do a lot of damage. So it's just what you expect from Arsenal at this point. And, you look at their numbers, they're tied with AS Roma for the fewest goals conceded in the top five leagues, six conceded in just 12 games. And the funny thing is, you look at Roma's underlyings, they've conceded six after having 13.2 expected goals against them. Arsenal have conceded just 6.1 expected goals, and that's the best in Europe, nearly a goal and a half clear of second place Bayern. So the defense is stingy, absolutely miserable. 10 set piece goals in 12 games. So, you know exactly what you're getting with them. It's going to be stubborn, it's going to be getting corners, getting free kicks, and nicking a goal, and then really, really making you work and slog for it. And that's going to be, for us to contend with. It's just, they're good off dead ball situations. They're good off most situations. They're very good at a high press. When they go into a mid block, they're very good. When they go even deeper, they know how to defend. So arguably, a side with very, very few weaknesses, like you mentioned, and it'll be up to us to figure out, where the chink in the armor is.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe if we were just want to start taking a look at, back to front. I mean, I think it goes from David Raya kind of forward. I mean, they've got strong goalkeeping, in terms of their ability to kind of manage, back to front in how they play their game. When we start walking through just the players on the pitch and, what people need to be aware of if they have not spent a bunch of time watching Arsenal this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't fault them for doing that, to be honest. Not watching Arsenal is one of my favorite things to do. But yeah, I mean, David Raya has been very good for the large part of the season, except when he was caught watching Richarlison's shot from 50 yards go above him in like full high definition. But other than that, he's strong in the air, very good with his distribution, good under pressure, often pushes up next to the centre backs to offer, a back three and provoke the press from the opposition. So he is a very well-rounded keeper. You expect nothing else from Spanish goalkeepers who are very, very accomplished with their feet. So he will be somebody who will obviously offer a lot of shot stopping, also build up some really good saves in number of matches this season. So not going to be easy to get by. In defense, I would go and highlight Gabriel as a massive miss. Obviously, everybody knows this at this point, not just in defense but in attack also. He's a supreme threat from attacking set pieces. I mean, at both ends, he's invaluable to Arsenal. So he's going to be missing with an injury. And Pedro Hincapie, who's a man Moises Caicedo knows very, very well, he will be deputizing at left centre back. So um, the fullbacks, Timber, excellent defensively at right back. So it's going to be quite an interesting one for Alejandro Garnacho if he starts this one against him 1v1. I think that's going to be a very, very good competition. And Calafiori is somebody who will take the left slot, and he's quite good going both ways. I think less defensively accomplished, but does cause a lot of issues with his positioning, with his aggressive bombing forward. He inverts. So there's a lot of other stuff that you see from the fullbacks. But Arteta in general offers them a high degree of fluidity. You're allowed to go into midfield. You can slot into the back line. You can also, function as a, into the wing slots and get those crosses into the box. You can do everything possible, to be honest. So there's a lot of rotations then. And I keep mentioning that word with Arsenal because you look at the game against Bayern, for example, the way they were moving, Rice would go to full back, Timber would go ahead, Calafiori would get into midfield, and then you would see Zubimendi dropping into the back line. So it's just about irking you, provoking you, forcing your press, luring you, pulling aside those pieces, and then finding those gaps that they exploit. And I think that's going to be the most difficult thing to face when you come up against Arsenal.
And then just kind of continuing to press forward with how they're playing, who their players are. Obviously, they've refreshed their side a little bit as well. They've added a couple of key players that, are kind of finding opportunity. Do you want to kind of continue to go through the different positional groupings and walk us through just how those new signings are complementing kind of some of the additional players they've had and how Mikel Arteta has been able to put them to work?
I think we cannot talk about anything else in terms of a better matchup than Rice versus Caicedo. I think that's
Yeah.
going to be just absolutely box office stuff to watch it. I believe Rice is up there with Caicedo as one of the best in the world. And I know Chelsea fans, a lot of them have this aversion to Declan Rice, but genuinely one of the most complete midfielders in the league. Incredible engine, can give you supreme progression with the ball. He's very, very good from dead ball deliveries. Can also pull out like 35, 40-yard crackers, ends up into the box for headers. Just absolute leader. And he's, I think, one of the reasons why Arsenal are where they are. You see him go out for any reason whatsoever, and I promise you, Arsenal will not be where they are. So he's going to be very, very difficult to keep a lid on. Um, Last season, seasons before that, obviously he was next to Jorginho, next to Partey, and Jorginho was very athletically challenged. But now they've found Martin Zubimendi, who's coming from Sociedad, and he's somebody who can offer a lot of orchestration in the first phase. So he will control the build up. He will do something that Rice is probably the weakest at. Go back to front, essentially just get the ball from the center backs, turn, find these little gaps into midfield, and that allows Rice to push into the kind of positions Enzo is pushing in. Get closer to the box, try and crash the box for headers, and try to, obviously he's supremely good at recoveries also. He will find these little opportunities to recover the ball and like recycle it for Arsenal over and over again. So that's something that he will love doing. He will also drop to the fullback positions, like I mentioned, and that is to try and obviously get a little space and obviously receive the ball looking forward, but also to drag the opposition central midfielder out, into the fullback positions and open up a gap in the center. So he's going to move around quite a bit. I think he's a far more dangerous proposition now than he was last season because there's a lot more freedom in that role. Zubimendi will stay deeper, so there's a lot of passing range and intelligence that he'll display from there. Try to pick out the right options wherever they are, and you know design where Arsenal's attacks are going to progress from. So those two, in my opinion, are going to be the hardest part about Arsenal, trying to find some kind of take from there. I think it's going to be quite difficult. Eberechi Eze, obviously, we've come up against him numerous times at Chelsea, and also it foiled us last time with the equalizer in that draw. So he's going to be that 8-10 hybrid that Martin Odegaard usually is. Somebody who will also, push into advanced positions, will also drop next to the pivots, pick up the ball and run at people. He's also got some very, very good movement. Pops up at the edge of the box. Spurs will vouch for that, and obviously has a pretty good passing range also, in my opinion. So quite a lethal, element of that attack, just connecting midfield and attack together. And I think he's done what Martin Odegaard came under fire for not really contributing goals and assists. So get yourself a guy who can give you three at the same time, and I think it just makes your team that much stronger.
Well, we're going to take our first ad break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about just the last part of the Arsenal situation in terms of their attack, and then we'll also look at a few of the weaknesses and areas where Chelsea might be able to take advantage. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, Sam. So we're just rounding out the nice things to say about Arsenal on the Chelsea podcast. What do you want to talk about when it comes to their attack before we start looking at some of the weaknesses of this Arsenal team?
Yeah, I think the Arsenal attack is like they obviously went for Victor Gyökeres, who we were apparently also quite interested in. He's been, I would say, yeah, a little inconsistent, a little bit of a flat track bully. And now he's obviously had some injury concerns. And so him and Harvards are touch and go for this game, but obviously have been out for quite some time. So Havertz, I don't think will be somebody who comes right in, may come off the bench a little bit, but yeah, I don't think either of them starts this one. And Arteta himself has just preferred Mikel Merino in there. And Merino functions as an industrious false nine. He also happens to be very, very good in the air. At one point, I think first or second in Europe's top five leagues for aerial duels won. So very good when he's crashing the box for headers, very good from set pieces. And what Merino does, Dan, he really doesn't have the pace to run in behind. He's more of a disengaged from the defensive line. He will get into midfield. He will allow Arsenal to have five players in that central box and overload the center. And he will pick up the ball and try to pick out passes. He will distribute it to the sides and then ghost in if he can for headers. And if you watch the first goal, the Trossard goal against Spurs, that's a prime example of what exactly he's superb at. He's excellent when he's given space. So if the CBs are not tight to him, if Chalobah, if West Fofana don't get tight to him, and he gets the space to turn, then it can be quite difficult. So I think you get tight to him, you get very, very close to him and make sure he doesn't really orchestrate anything, then maybe you foil a little bit of Arsenal's threat in there. But when he also drops down, it's when the wingers make these diagonal runs. You will also see Eze and Rice bomb up and try to get behind the center forward, making those runs beyond the last line. So it's just tormenting the last line as much as possible. So left wing Trossard is somebody who got injured against Bayern. Remains a doubt. I think he has a late fitness test for this one. More of an off-ball threat, some really good movement. Can also give you some nice long-range shots, but when he gets into the box and he's able to turn or at least gets a shooting opportunity, he punishes you a lot. So I think him at left wing is going to be quite the intriguing proposition. On the right wing, Saka, I think, speaks for himself. Very, very good. One of the best in his position. And if, well, Kukureya needed like a great warm up to come up against him, I don't think you can look for anybody better than Lamine Yamal. So I'm hoping he's ready for this one. And if he keeps Saka quiet here, then I think a major part of keeping Arsenal quiet is also accomplished.
Well, let's then flip to just, are there some areas that you can pinpoint that will give Chelsea supporters just a little bit of hope, a little bit of belief that there are weaknesses to this side? And again, I mean, they have not lost many games this season. They have not drawn many games this season. And so we do have our work cut out for us. But on the flip side, we are not losing a ton of games either. So, we are not necessarily the easiest out for this Arsenal side.
Yeah, the last defeat was, I believe, 3 months ago, almost 3 months ago, 31st of August against Liverpool. So, and that was also a late defeat after I think Dominic Szoboszlai scored there. So, yeah, I would probably say there are not too many weaknesses there to exploit. I think one of them brought about by Gabriel's absence. So if you have to cause issues, then you have to look at Pierre Hincapié at centre back. I've always seen him as a left back predominantly and somebody who can play centre back, possibly in a back three. But him being used there is quite interesting because I think he's in terms of stature, in terms of at least being emphatic as a centre back, he's not quite there. So you could cause a Jorel Hato versus Karabakh kind of situation if you target him enough, in my opinion. So um, if you can exploit his positioning, um, if you can also do it while Calafiori bombs up into some advanced positions, I think there's something to be had. So if it's Estevao or if it's Neto on the right hand side, then you can definitely get some purchase in this position. So if I were to target one element, it would definitely be Peter Nkapie, who is also a very good player, let me just add. So he might end up having a good game also, don't be surprised, but definitely one worth exploiting because the partnership with Saliba is also new. The second tactical one is something that I noticed against Bayern, and a lot of people pointed it out. It just, when you drop one of the pivots, so Bayern took Pavlovic and Joshua Kimmich, who were their double pivots and then drop them into the back line often, like in between the centre backs. And if you watch the first goal, Joshua Kimmich goes into the back line in between the centre backs, and that makes it a 3v2 on Arsenal's front two. And then nobody presses Kimmich. And he's able to pull out a long ball for Serge Gnabry on the right wing, and who just squares it for Leonard Carl to score the equalizer. So I think we've seen that happen with Chelsea, where there have been systems, especially Crystal Palace showed us a very good way to stop our central progression. And how Maresca fixed that was to try and drop Caicedo into the back line. So just put him next to the fullbacks, make sure that the opposition is trying to get another additional player in there to get a 3v2 and just turn it into a 3v3. And then you start opening up the center. So I think if you see Caicedo starting maybe closer to the center backs rather than in midfield, I think then Maresca has done his homework. But Arsenal also found a way around that. So it'll be very interesting to see because they adapt quickly. They're not a side that likes giving away weaknesses a lot, but that's probably like the only other weakness that I'd point out. They do have a high line, they do press a lot, and in high press phases, maybe if they're trying to press you and build up, if you get a little bit of breathing space, then maybe it's worth your time to go 1v1 against the fullbacks. Timber is very, very good. It'll be interesting to see how he does against Garnacho in those isolated positions, but if whoever the centre forward is dropping enough for you to isolate the fullbacks, then I think Calafiori versus Neto or an Estevao could be really, really interesting to watch. So I think that's basically the three weaknesses that I would point out. Not really weaknesses, but just opportunities or aspects that you can exploit.
Sure. Well, let's do this then. Enzo Maresca had the pre-match press conference. He was very excited about the possibility of Cole Palmer and Estevao getting a chance to play together with one another against teams in the future. What are some of the questions or the considerations that you think he's going to have to make for this game? And I will try to postulate an answer that maybe he would present.
I think you tossed the first one right into my lap, which is, you have Cole Palmer now hailed as being available from the start. Do you take that risk, or considering the club has been quite conservative, bring him on from the bench, just ease him in and do that? Or because the magnitude demands it, you just shock Arsenal and say, okay, we've got a talisman back. Let's see how you cope with it.
I feel as if it's more the threat that Cole Palmer is going to start that they'll lead with. Just my guess on this one. I mean, obviously we did see, we haven't necessarily seen a ton of players just like drop immediately back in after injury into a starting role. Now, not all players are Cole Palmer. So I just think that I see him more as exactly at 60 minutes, he gets an opportunity to come on and, be an individual who can change the game and give Arsenal and Arteta a different thing to kind of consider or think about. I mean, hopefully we're winning, multiple goals up at that time. And so it's not even something we have to consider doing and we can give him a rest, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And so I'm guessing it would be Cole Palmer coming off the bench and not starting. And we will see, some combination of our winging group, our wingers group rather, end up starting this game, and Cole would be on the bench coming off of it.
And that's, I think, in line with what we've done this season and trying to be respectful of the injury situations that we've had. Obviously, you'd love to have a fully fit Cole Palmer. We all know what he did against PSG in that Club World Cup final. So I'm very tempted, and I'm rubbing my hands saying, if you get him onto the pitch, even if it is for the last 15-20 minutes, then maybe there's an impact there. So I would definitely keep him, from the bench situation and try to get, if the game is level or if you have an opportunity to get something off it, then why not? You show your cards and go from there. So the next question is again related to the attack, and this is maybe just something that happened against Barcelona. Was we talked about it in the preview pod, and I hazarded a guess that Maresca might look at Pedro Neto at false nine because of the high line, and obviously he is in better form than Delap and Joao Pedro both. So do you again go for meritocracy and say, let's try Pedro Neto in that front, front sort of like center forward role, or are you trying to just go back to what you think is the strongest side, a well rested Joao Pedro, and then you go from there? What is your thinking here in terms of the 9 and 10 configuration?
Yeah, it's interesting to me because obviously this game I think is the most critical, but then we have the two trips away, one to Leeds and one to Bournemouth coming up within a week's time of this game, and so like it is a fast turn. I would imagine that Maresca is looking to win this game because this is if you don't win it, the idea of potentially being in a title conversation, in a title race, or even holding Arsenal back from just their ascendancy becomes that much more difficult for the entirety of the league, not just Chelsea. My guess is I think he'll go with gosh, I think he's going to start Delap as the 9. I think Pedro Neto gets his start on the right hand side. And I do or would potentially see an opportunity for Joao Pedro, but he has liked the putting Reece James into midfield in some of these situations and then having Malagusto play right back. And so I think that that's probably the biggest kind of determining factor to me is like if he decides he wants to do that, then obviously I think he's gonna not go with Joao Pedro, and it would be kind of a different type of attack. And again, how fit is and how healthy is and how many minutes does he want to put Joao Pedro in? Considering Liam Delap obviously has come back and is kind of finding himself into proper fitness. He still needs to get Cole back into the game. He obviously has Estevao who can come on off the bench. He's got Gittins and Garnacho to benefit from as well. I'm guessing that's where he's going to go, but I'm also not so confident in it that I feel like the answer is completely baked, and I think it's going to come down to even just the last kind of considerations and the half day and hours building up to the match on what Maresca wants to do.
Yeah, I think this is going to be his biggest headache by far, and it's trying to figure out whether you want to be very compact out of position. To be honest, I've just watched Joao Pedro these past few games, and I can forgive you if you're a little off the pace and you're feeling an injury or something of the sort. But his work out of possession just hasn't been good enough. He hasn't been tracking back a lot of times where he just gives up. And in a game like this, where they're going to be extremely good out of possession, and there are lots of players who rotate, and without excellent communication to be able to pinpoint, you know, even the selflessness of trying to give up a marker, sacrifice, and then press on to somebody else and take that responsibility if somebody's not doing it. Right now, whether it's physical limitations or whether it's just the mental aspect of the play, I don't see him there. The lap will give you a little bit of running. He will give you, the ability to press it down. But Joao Pedro really hasn't shown it to me in the past few games. Whether it's a confidence thing, I don't know. So I think if you do go with Pedro Neto there, then I absolutely have no fault with it. Joao Pedro has done it to himself. But the other question is, the fullbacks are going to rotate. It's going to demand a lot of discipline in tracking back, and your two best tracking back options are Garnacho and Neto. So he is split there in terms of what role do I give to Neto. Obviously, Estevao has done really, really well, but this also means not just taking on Calafiori, but also following him into those deep areas like he had to with Alejandro Balde to make sure that whoever's at right back doesn't get overwhelmed. So those are massive, massive challenges. So I completely agree when you say that maybe this is another game where we see Caicedo plus Reece James with Malagusta at right back, because Reece James can then slot into the back five and give you that extra centre back if need be to defend those positions. So I think we see Reece James in midfield with Caicedo. I do think we also might see Neto at false nine. I don't know, but again, if that's a consideration, Maresca will be giving it very, very close thought.
Well, those are big considerations for one Enzo Maresca to make heading into this match. Do you feel like it's time to make some predictions here, Sam, on what we think will transpire, what we think will happen, and maybe one or two on the ledge predictions that we might have for this match?
Mm-hmm. Let's go for it. You want to go first, or should I do the honors?
I think it's going to be a draw. Because I'm just hoping, because we did this during the midweek, that if we predict draws, Chelsea win. So I'm just going to go with it again. I'm going to go 1-1 draw and I guess if I were going to go on the ledge with it, I'm going to say it actually is a very even affair up till about 70 minutes in. I don't think we score, or either side scores, until 70 minutes plus.
That is quite an interesting one, to be honest. I really don't know what Arsenal's stats are in that time of the game, but I'm just looking them up right now, and well, they've conceded only 3 goals in the second half of games. Only only 2 past the 60-minute mark. So good luck to you, my friend. Definitely qualifies as
I'm going for an actual on the ledge one here. Like I'm trying to kind of, I'm looking at the fact that like we've also been the beneficiaries of scoring late goals, and so I think you're kind of getting like rock and hard place type of situation here. And so I think it's going to take us some time to kind of grind them down. I think also like we've not been an easy get for goal recently either. So like I do think it is going to be almost a battle of attrition between these two sides, and I think Arsenal probably will be happier with the point than we will. But I do think this kind of has a draw to me in mind.
So what do you want, the good news or the bad news first?
I'll take the bad news first so that you can delight us with the last nice thing before we end.
Yeah, so we've conceded 5 goals after the 76th minute mark, which is by far, I think, double of what we've conceded in any other 15-minute window in the Premier League this season. So if you're betting on somebody to be, conceding after the 75th minute, the numbers wise, it definitely says it's us, and I'm hoping we can prove that wrong. The good news is that we've scored 15 goals in the second half this season compared to just 8 in the first half. So there's definitely a lot more purchase in what you said, that the second half will come alive. But yeah, in that 15 minute after the halftime mark is when we are strongest. So definitely on the ledge prediction, and I'll give you that. But 8 goals in that 15-minute window after halftime definitely looks like a great time to score, because then you're messing around with their subs. You're making Mikel Arteta think what he wants to do in terms of approaching the game. So great time to score, in my opinion. So yes, absolutely. For me, the score is again very, very narrow. Head and heart say something completely different. Head says it's going to be a draw, like you mentioned. It's probably going to be a 1-1 or a 2-2, a low scoring draw. But heart wants a win. Finally get that elusive win against them. So 2-1. Let's go with the heart. And on the ledge prediction is, I think, either the centre backs or Moises Caicedo get an assist.
Oh, okay. All right. I could see that happening. It's a very fair one to kind of consider. Obviously, best in the world type of clash of midfielders. Want your guy to come out ahead, both on the end result for the team, but also in the individual performances as well too. I think that does it, though. I think we now have put some stuff out into the universe there. Hopefully, Chelsea supporters listening to this feeling better about where we might be able to find some goodness against this Arsenal side and absolutely silence the Gunners on the day. But that's going to do it for this episode. So don't forget, like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified on YouTube. Don't forget to leave nice comments as well. We always appreciate and read those. You can leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That's always appreciated. It helps people find the podcast. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter, the London is Blue Dispatch, written by our good friend here, Sam, CFC Central. Been some absolute wonders of a free newsletter that arrives in your inbox that he's been writing over the past couple months here that you absolutely have to get. Free, no issue, no charge, absolutely amazing. And then you can also get involved in our Discord community in a free or paid capacity to help support the podcast. But that is going to do it for this episode. So thank you so much for listening. Until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.